Okay, welcome to the Pretty Stitch, and this is video number 3 in my Tunisian series, and today we're going to learn how to do the Tunisian knit stitch. The previous 2 videos we did Tunisian simple stitch, which is the very first stitch that you really should learn, and then after that we did the purl stitch, and now we're doing the knit stitch. So we're going to chain 10 again. So I have my 10 chains, and as I said before, make sure you're using, if you're doing this for the first time, just basic worsted weight yarn in a light color, multicolored yarn. It's hard to see the stitches. Once you get, secure with it and comfortable, use whatever yarn you would like, but this just makes life a little easier. And make sure it's a light color, don't have black. All right, so your loop on your hook will count as a stitch, and we're going to work in the back bump, and you're going to pull up loops like we did in the previous 2. This is your setup row for row 1, so it's the same. Just pulling up your loops, working in the back bump, and we will have 10 loops on our hook. So we've got one more chain. So I have my 10 loops on my hook. So now we need to work these off, and you're going to work them off the same way we've been doing it. Yarn over, pulling through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and just continue to yarn over and pull through 2 for the rest of row 1. And then we'll get ready to do the knit stitch. Okay, so now we have completed row 1. This is the foundation row, what we've been doing. So now we need to do the knit stitch. So the knit stitch can be a little bit tricky, but it really isn't difficult. You just need to, normally you work right here in the bar. It's like the surface right here. But with the knit stitch, if you really look at this, let me see if I can spread her apart a little bit. These bars, here is the front bar, but then there is actually a bar behind it. This is your running stitch through the top here. And if you look closely, it looks like a chain. And so your bars kind of run, the running stitch runs through the bars basically. So here's the front bar, but then there is, can't really see it on the other side, but there is a back bar. So when you spread this apart, I'm probably making 0 sense, but when you spread this apart, it actually looks like a little chain in there. So when you work the knit stitch, you're actually going to insert your hook through that chain, or the V. If you think of it as a V, here's one part of the V right there. See if we can get a little better angle here. And then here's the other part of the V. Oops, come on. There she is, right there. So you're going to put your hook right in the middle of that V. So hopefully I explained that well enough that you can understand it. If not, I apologize. There are other videos out there. So anyway, we're going to get started. So we're going to work through that stitch, so you can see, and then pull up our loop, just like that. So now when you have it pulled up, now you can see it a whole lot better. It kind of pops that bar from behind into the front. Now all of a sudden, front and center, it looks like your V stitch. So we're going to do the same thing, work it through, and now we have 3 loops, so you're going to keep going. Now if you use a larger hook, then the V's you'll be able to see a little bit easier. So we're almost done. So now we are to our last stitch. So the last stitch should be pretty simple because when you're looking at it like this, it looks like a chain. So you're just going to insert your hook just like you would with working in a chain, working in the front of the chain. So just pop it right in there and then pull up your loop. So now we've worked row 1 completely in Tunisian knit stitch. Now knit stitch likes to curl too, just like simple stitch. Where, you know, they're curlers. They like to curl. But it creates a nice fabric, and it does create a knitted like fabric. Now it is a little bit more dense than a typical knitted fabric, so I've already started my return pass. I yarned over, pulled through the first loop, so I apologize, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we're going to yarn over again, pull through 2, and continue to pull through 2. So as I said before, this does look like a knitted fabric from the front, but a knitted fabric with knitting is a little bit more pliable, I think, but this still is a pretty nice fabric. You know, it's very warm. It'd be a very nice cozy fabric. I've made gloves out of this, really nice for that. It's really great for pot holders. If you're working with cotton yarn, Tunisian is your go-to. If you want a pot holder that heat is not going to go through, this Tunisian is great for that. I just recommend making 2 sides. So, you know, if this was like, let's say you're going to make a little baby hot pad, you could, you know, make 1 and then make 2 of them and then stitch them together, and heat's not going through that. They're great. I use them a lot for pot holders. So anyway, let's get back to Tunisian knit stitch. I get excited. All right, so now we need to work row 3, and you're going to work the same thing. You're going to look at your bar here. So if you were working simple, you would just work there. But with knit, you want to find that back bar there and work right through the center, just like that. And as you get on more, when we do more rows, you'll be able to really see the knit stitch, and it'll be easier as you're working more rows of seeing where to insert your hook. The beginning rows might be a little bit tricky for you, especially if you've not done this stitch before. But once you know, if you're making a lot of rows in knit stitch, it's going to show up pretty quickly for you. All right, so now we're going to work our last stitch here. So when you're working the knit stitch in the last, it can get a little tricky because you have your running stitch here, like up here is part of your running stitch. So you don't want to work in that. You want to work right in this chain right here for your last stitch. So if you just look at it and see this is your last stitch here, or from your previous row, and then the stitch right above it will be your last stitch. So we will do that right in there, and now you have worked row 3, part A. Now we need to do part B, our return pass. So yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, and just keep going. Okay, so as you can see, it's starting to look a lot more like knitted stitches. So we'll work a couple more rows. So you can see clearly right here where you need to work, right in that center. So I'm going to put my hook right in there. Just gets a lot easier as the more rows you make of, you know, where to insert your hook. But as you get going, you're gonna get it. It's really not difficult. And as I said before, once you know the basics of the simple stitch, the purl stitch, and the knit stitch, you know, you are set. You can just take off and have a ball with Tunisian and just do all kinds of stuff. Then we will finish this up for row 4. And I think I'll do 6 rows so you can really see the knit stitch. So we're just going right in that center there. Sorry, my dryer is doing something. I don't have any kids home, but now I have a noisy appliance, so I can't win. Alright, so my last stitch. See, now you can really see those knit stitches there. And we are going to pull those, or work those guys off. So I will work one more row, and then we will work these stitches off in knit stitch. And as you can see, it's not that time consuming. Some people might think it is, but you know, once you get familiar with it, you know, it's really not, unless you have a very complex pattern. But and here's our last stitch for row 6. Now the nice thing when you're working Tunisian knit stitch on the ends, you have a nice neat end as well. And it's really easy. Let's say you were making a bunch of squares and then you were going to join them together, stitch them together for, you know, like a patchwork. You know, you can see when you turn it on the edge, it's looks pretty similar to this edge here. Okay, so now we're going to work these guys off. And see this, see all of our nice knitted stitches. Now on the other side, it doesn't look the same as a knitted fabric if you were, you know, doing straight up knitting, but you know, this is a close sibling, I guess you could say. They're not twins, they're sisters. Okay, so let's work these guys off. So as I said before, you want to work them off in the stitches that you have been doing, unless the pattern states otherwise. So we're working these off in the knitted Tunisian knit stitch. So you insert your hook in the middle, pull up your loop, and do the same thing, work your slip stitch just like that. And we're going to keep doing that all the way across. And as I said before, watch your tension. And it's really curling. So what you could do to help with this is, let's say you wanted to make a Tunisian knit stitch blanket. I would suggest, and what I have done, and it really does help and work, is, you know, you could work, let's say you were making a blanket, you could work 6 rows in purl stitch, and then I would even have, you know, a couple, like your first, let's say first 6 stitches here be purl stitch, you know, as a border, and then your bottom, you know, your setup rows are purl stitches, and then of course over here they're purl, and then the middle of your blanket, you know, work your knit stitches, and then of course when you're finishing, you know, your top border. And it really helps with it, you know, not doing that. So the purl stitch can be your friend. So this is the Tunisian knit stitch. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching.